welcome to the American Institute in Tashkent Professional Development Workshop. Thank you for coming today. So we have several, segments of today's meeting. We're going to just quickly go over some IELTS prep because even though I know both of you at least have already been there, done that, it's still useful skills to have. Continue to improve and better yourself. And I actually want to start by answering your question that you started off with. You were going to go ahead and ask me now. You said, is the IELTS subjective or not? Well, my answer to that is like everything else in life, everything is partially subjective, right? Even the SATs, ACTs, there's at least when I was that age, there's an essay section. So somebody's still reading that and someone's making a judgment. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe their girlfriend broke up with them, right? Maybe they lost all their money. So everything is subjective to a degree, but I feel overall IELTS is a good determination in very broad terms. So like, for example, what I always say, like, if I ask you, keep it very simple, what's your favorite sport? How would you answer that question? Okay, that's it. That's what's. Do you think that's a high level answer or a low level answer? Low level. Well, at least you spoke more than one word. A one word answer is probably the worst thing you can do on an IELTS exam. So what I tell people is the most important aspect of the IELTS exam is they're trying to see how much you speak like a native speaker. So when it comes to IELTS, it's about being as specific and detailed as possible. Right, descriptive words, descriptive. So I'll ask you again. You said football, right? Why do you like football? All right. So do you have a favorite team? Do you have a favorite player? Do you play with your friends? All of these questions I'm asking you, you should just say naturally, organically.
Like for example,
Yeah.
I love playing football because I've been playing it since I was a child. And my father actually got me into it because he liked to play Benzema.
See, better. The more detailed, the more like good. Do you have a favorite football player? Or you? Yeah. So tell us again. You can't be too specific. The whole point is to just again speak like a native speaker, be as detailed and personal as possible, because that's where the subjective and objective thing comes in. If you give me a one word answer, that's objective. Like, well, that's no good, right? So what I want to do today is just quickly go over some like vocabulary terms to see how you would express that, and then give you some mock IELTS questions. So what I have here, we're going to talk about the news and media. I think it's an interesting subject, obviously. So I actually have a marker here, so I'll use it. So one of the things that I feel that a lot of non-native speakers get confused about is that there's a lot of words in English that have multiple, they're spelled the same, but they have multiple meanings or even multiple pronunciations. So one of my favorite ways to explain this is this. Okay, what do you see here? Right. So a lot of people can't even see the difference, right? So how would you explain the difference then?
The same word, two different meanings.
So what is the difference between Polish and Polish?
Polish is people from Poland, they call themselves, right?
Sure.
And
Yes.
Polish is when you clean something really well.
Okay. So that's a very basic one. So since we're talking about news and media, what's this? Source. So this word has multiple meanings, right? You could have a source of fuel, but when we're talking about media terms, do you know what this is referring to?
Where you got the information.
Where you got the information, perfect. So you say, I have a insider source, or this person gave me a source of information. Good. So we understand that. So let's move ahead and get a little more difficult. So we'll go over here. So how would you describe globalization? Sure. Okay, well, how would you answer that question?
Exchange of culture, tradition, and having growth rates.
Yes, I was going to say, all of that's true. The most important aspect of globalization is economic relations. And through economic relations, that's where you get all the side effects of cultural exchange and, right, right. Okay, so let's say basics. So I won't go into detail about that, but yeah, these are just words. So for example, how about accessible? How would you describe accessible? Like, is this level of media accessible to a wide audience, right? Is this information for a specific audience? Is it too advanced or is it too simple for your audience, right? Because media is all about presenting information to a different audience base, for example. Like, are you familiar with American media in any way? Yeah? Like you have, not to get, I don't want to get too political, but I will just quickly. So in the very simplistic left and right terms, so we have, I would say, yes, what is called center, I would say CNN is probably remember, so like everything is subjective to a degree, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a movie or a news broadcast, there's always some inherent bias involved, right? It's not just what you say on the news, it's what you don't say, right? So, for example, we have, I'd say, oh, yeah, let's make sure we do this right. MSNBC, and then we have Fox News, right? So, on a given news day, MSNBC, like same day, same time, MSNBC over here might be saying, Trump did this bad thing today, right? And on Fox, Hunter Biden did this bad thing. So they're selective in what sources of information they're using. All right, so I want to move on quickly. Do either of you know what captivating means? Captivating.
Like catches your attention, something that's so wonderful that's your attention.
Yes, it's interesting, but in a very, it's say in an intriguing way. It grabs your attention. Like, oh, I just saw a captivating news story about famous swimmer, or I think I just read about a guy who walked up Mount Everest with just shorts on or something. Like that'd be a captivating story. All right, so I won't waste your time too much. So I just want to practice some questions with you. So remember, try to be specific, and you say, personally, for example, I think, in my opinion. So we'll start with you. What? All right, fine. You're already in university. Doesn't matter anymore. So, for example, which is more popular in your country, newspapers or magazines?
Magazines.
And why do you say that?
Because you see them at every store, every store. So I think people have moved on from newspapers to digital newspapers, the outlets, and magazines still exist.
All right. All right. So what when I'm doing IELTS prep, I always try to do this with my students. Everybody wants the top score, right? I would say your answer would probably be around here somewhere. Do you know how you can get it better? Are there any specific magazines in Uzbekistan that you know? All right, well then get that information next time. Remember, we all you try to get number 9 so you end up here, right? Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. What hobby do you enjoy the most?
I enjoy meditating.
Okay.
It helps me relax, reduce the thoughts, and stop the running mind.
Okay, good. What else could we say about that? What other things you can add to that? Maybe you say, when you started meditating, is there a famous person, famous yoga teacher you know? Did you do it in school? Do you figure it out on your own? Right?
For example, I say, yeah, I love meditating because I actually went to China recently.
Perfect.
They had a monastery here with people who meditate a lot, and I've had some time, 3 months actually, to learn about it.
All right, again, exactly, very specific and interesting. Because remember we talked about being this test being subjective, right? If you speak to an IELTS examiner, they're probably like this. All they do is listen to this stuff all day, every day. But you say, oh, you went to China and did yoga at a monastery. That's interesting, right? So then they'll probably give you more detail, more specific, more interesting. Okay, so we can move on. How do you usually get the news?
I usually get the news when I wake up first thing in the morning. I check my phone. I see there's a few news outlets, so I get notifications from them. There are notifications about news about finance, politics, so on. But I usually get them from my phone online.
Okay. So what else can we be more specific about? So I'll ask you a similar question. Yes, I was just going to ask you next question is what types of sources do you check? Do you check local Uzbek news? Do you check international news? BBC or Al Jazeera? There's so many different ones, right? So which type of sources do you check?
I check both local and national ones. For international ones, I love to read Times News magazine and the BBC. And for the local ones, I check the Uz News channel and Uz Report channel because they present the world more or less objective.
Okay, and like I said, personally, I always say you try to get as many sources of information as possible, and in the combination of all of it, somewhere is the most truth you'll find, right? Okay, so we'll continue on. So, which magazines do you usually read? And if you don't read magazines, you can say that too, but then you'd say, well, I don't read magazines. Actually, I don't read magazines. But what I do read is, or what I watch is, so let's give that a try. What magazines do you usually read?
Well, I actually don't read magazines. I think the last time I read a magazine was 7 years ago. I think it was called, well, it was a magazine by BBC News. But instead, nowadays, I just, watch videos, so informative videos about the news.
Okay. And how is it important to follow the news? And you can also say it's not important. I don't care, but you got to justify your answer, right? So what would you say? Is news important to you?
Well, definitely yes. But again,
That's okay. We're here just to practice. I'm not judging you. You didn't pay a bunch of. How much did you got? You have to pay for the IELTS test, I assume, right? How much was it here in Uzbekistan?
How much was it? I gave it 4 years ago.
Oh, 400. Oh, it's like 400, $100. Okay, that's $100. That's a lot.
$100?
That's a lot here.
Wow.
Okay.
I thought I paid this.
All right. So last question, and then we'll move on to my colleague over here. Very simple. I'll have both of you do it. It's so simple. Do you check the news every day?
I don't check the news every day. So I'm a student and I work at the same time. I don't have a lot of time to sit on my phone and check.
Okay. Good answer. How can we make that better? What would you say? So I don't have a lot of time, but in my free time, I play a game. I could play football. I play video games. Whatever it is. Okay. How about you? Do you check the news every day?
well, I try to check the news every day because it's directly related to my major, international relations. I try to check what's going on in the Ukraine, or how's the situation with the Palestine and Israeli war, and just the news. I try to check the news every day.
All right. Well, I'll leave it at that for our IELTS section of today's workshop.